so I'm gonna do it right now.
She has the, she said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Katie did.
Yeah.
I just had a moment where I was like, oh no, I didn't
What was
do
he going
that.
to develop? Another marina?
No, just so 4 houses, but then you wanted the suites.
Yeah, I see Katie there, but I'm not sure whether they're gonna, is there back here? Second. I don't have access to my.
So much of it.
Oh, okay.
I have the access to my email on here. Do you need one?
Sea glass, yeah.
Just one.
Yeah. Other gardens.
Oh, we did?
Because it looks like the guys.
She's
Headquarters.
Yeah.
Makes
There's
sense.
gonna be a big.
But I just.
Very different, so he was going for a total different one. Even the aesthetic of this waterfront side is very great.
We ran out.
I don't think it's
We
gonna
had
be
some, but
Should I go get some more?
maybe Vaughn or someone can do that. I'll go ask her. You sit there.
Just not great.
Oh, when you're comparing that. It does look
Okay,
cool.
you're up there. You know what, so if she doesn't have
But honestly, at least they're tearing it back because, you know, look at the setback. They're tearing it back, so it's not.
Is anybody sitting here? Oh, thank you. Some good ideas. Some questions. That's the world that live. That's more push and pull.
Vaughn's gonna bring it into.
And how does Oh, so it'll be proposed, right? I'm like, is it too far, like? No, I mean, will they allow access to use when the rest of us are permitted during the summer short?
I can't picture the screens.
Stuff like that. I'm like, how will we
One
move
screen
the
and a
truck?
screen on there, I just can't.
Yeah. How long do they rent? What, up there? Or they park their cars? How much do you have on the table?
They're printing 10 more, they'll put them out here in a moment.
But he do that.
Did you just get the message?
See how it's on top of so great, because that turn on the Sokol side is, I don't even like going around that corner.
Yeah, or they might.
Do you know what I mean? All of the,
Like bars. The first part.
the height.
I understand that they get to speak to. I understand the number of staff, but now, do you know the Georgia?
Along Marine Drive, that's long where Seagull's was gonna be.
Yes.
And now you gotta do it.
Yes, I've always been surreal.
That's good.
Another thank you. More people still coming.
You don't like it?
Tim suggests. Green. Green.
That's his only suggestion.
Yes, because he said, Mother, blocking your past is not going to carry. So who's here?
Yes, it said verbal comments. Written comments had to be. So it's verbally.
Sorry, guys, I need to really get to it.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Can we hold off until Lisa gets back? Can we hold off until Lisa gets back? She'll be here in just a second. Oh, she did, thank you. And I think Leslie needs one too. You can share? They're gonna share. They're gonna share. Yeah, we can share, so yeah. Okay.
No, I just have the windows open and no heat.
Turn it on silent or something.
Inside, right? On the other side, you have to flip that switch.
So that's on silent, so it's just background. We have a lot of meetings today with barely any time to catch a breath or charge our phones or eat in between, but I think we're ready to call this committee of the whole to order for September 26th, 2023. And we're honored to be gathered here on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. And first we need to approve the agenda. I think is there any? I guess maybe we've still got other busy operations here in Town Hall that we need to. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Sorry, not everybody put up their hand for, in favor, so I had to ask. But that does pass. So first, we're looking at the development variance permit 2022-06 for 835 Gibsons Way. And this is a development proposal or a variance request that we're quite familiar with as a council, having seen it for several months now, and it's come here before with some requests to get more information. So we're ready now for a second time because it has gone through this process before, but we need to go through it again whenever it comes to council in consideration, which it will for the next council meeting, presumably, to ask anyone who feels affected by this development variance permit proposal to be heard and speak to council. Now, we do have one written submission, is that correct? Still, or have any more written submissions come in? Okay, so no, we do have one in our package, but I'll ask for a first time if anyone wants to speak to this proposal. I'll ask for a second time. And a third and final time before we look at it as a council. Okay, seeing none. We have the report, we're quite familiar with it, with this proposal. There have been some changes, though. Could I ask just a quick summary of the changes? Is that...
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hey there. So the staff report provides you with an opinion letter for the viability of the project, a traffic impact study, and they have reduced the parking variance as well. They've added an additional 12 parking spaces to the proposal. So now we're looking at reducing the parking from 136 spaces to 80 spaces. The other items, the applicant held a public information meeting, and then council had requested that the applicant secure a longer term for rentals. So we've got 4 items that they have committed to, a 20-year term to secure all 81 units as rental, a 15-year term to provide 28 rental units in the building at affordable rates, a 20-year term to provide a childcare space on the ground floor of the building, and then they've also said that they will provide a 10% rental discount to a childcare operator for the first year that the building is open.
Thank you. So it does seem that all the requests that council made, have been entertained. At least it's up to council to decide if we're satisfied with those responses. I will ask: do we have anything at this point? I see there's a lot of in the recommendation. There's still kind of room to be changed here, and I guess we'll have to come up with some of the wording. Is that the intent of staff here?
That's correct, Ms. Mayor. There's 3 options for you.
And one question I have is the commitment to the affordable housing. Is that? I didn't hear that directly in the. I mean, which can be a hard thing to do because it's reliant on funding. But what's the commitment we're asking for there?
Is that for me? Mr.
Yeah, I'm
Chair?
looking, sorry, I'm looking, you can't see that I'm looking at the screen, but yeah,
Okay.
I'll be clear.
Thank you. So they've committed to 28 of the units being affordable in the terms of rental rates. And we do have the applicant in the audience. If you would like to direct him with the question too.
Okay, yeah, you can certainly speak to that. Speak here, just so anyone online can.
So, may I ask the question once more again, please? What's the question exactly?
Just the level of commitment to the affordable housing through CMHC.
So we are following the guidelines by CMHC, which basically they have average annual income for families, and then the rent should be 30% or less than that average annual income, which is basically that's a benchmark introduced by CMHC for a year. Or so basically we are going to follow that that guideline, and in terms of it would be for 15 years with a covenant on the property. So basically, the owner is willing to have a covenant on the property to provide the affordable rental.
Thank you, and I think I saw Councillor DeAndrade first. Any subsequent questions on that?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to request that, or at least hear from him about a letter confirming the funding for, I don't know, BC Housing or, and also a question, why, my understanding with the BC Housing is that they would provide funding.
I'm sorry, Councillor DeAndrade, BC Housing isn't involved in this at all, as far as I understand.
no, okay, so it's
I just need to stop you to correct
It's
you on
not
that.
BC housing thing, so it's not some sort of social housing. That's basically affordable rental for families, for young professionals or for seniors, or so it's not social housing. So basically, BC housing is not involved.
Okay, so it's not subsidizing housing.
No, it's not. It's affordable housing.
Okay. It would be nice to have this definition in writing for us to understand, because the terminology varies according to the provider. So,
I can add one thing. You know, CMHC provides exactly the definition, and so I can provide later if you want, or you can, or anyone can go to the website and see what's the definition. So,
Yeah, the way it works is CMHC provides kind of preferential, arguably subsidized interest rates in order to ensure that the rents are kept at a lower level that they define as affordable.
correct.
But it's not a direct subsidy for to such as supportive housing on School Road, for example. Like that's a different model. This is about property owners being able to qualify for these lower interest rates in exchange for committing to keeping the rents low for a certain period of time, which is 15 years would be the arrangement with CMHC, is what I'm hearing.
just to follow up, so why, if the height of the building, like it's decrease, this will be impacted? You still get 28 units if you are willing to.
You know what? We try to introduce the whole concept of the building in a way for a minimum required revenue to make the whole project financially feasible. So basically, that's the reason to request that. So basically, the height is because we need that number of the units to be provided for the building. So that's why we basically requested to have more height so we can provide more units in the building and generate revenue which matches with the required revenue from the building.
Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White. When the project came before the ADP, and I believe it was discussed because of the parking variance, there had been some conversation around providing car share parking within the complex. In the traffic study, it mentions that the car share is at the mall, but human nature being what human nature is, case in point, yesterday when the weather was as charming as it was, people are not going to want to wander to the mall to pick up a car share. So is there still consideration for including car share parking within the footprint of the parking you have available? And there was also some discussion of actually providing a car share unit with preference being given to the affordable housing units, which at least gives them an opportunity, if they do need a car and don't have a car, that there is provision on site for that. So I'm just wondering, is that
Yes.
off the table, or?
No, we are providing some spots for share cars, and then, yeah, they can use it.
I'll just look to staff here to clarify too, so that we aren't asking, just confirming things with the proponent for everything. My understanding is everything in option one has already been negotiated with the developer. Is that's why it's there, right? Like we don't need to be doing the negotiation right now. This has been discussed, right? Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So option one does include the provision of 2 car share spaces and vehicles, and then the registration of the covenants for the 28 units of rentals. So it's the 28 units at a at the CMHC affordable rate for 15 years, and it's the entire building that's a rental building for 20 years.
Councillor Lemley.
I'm going to move recommendations A and A and A. Does that make sense? Without me repeating everything that's in there?
Yeah, I have more questions.
It's a little tricky. A motion can be made at any time. It just needs to be seconded, but I need to clarify. So that's really option one. Yeah, it's just the way it's been formatted here is confusing because option one isn't actually on the page in front of us.
I'm assuming A on the beginning is that they've met those conditions, right?
I think you're putting forward option one, I think.
Option one, okay.
Which is on page 7 of the agenda. I'll just make sure you see that in your, and everyone has a chance to make sure we're looking at the same thing. Right, okay. Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Corporate Officer.
Do you mind if I read the resolution out for the record?
Is that what council would like?
Yes.
Okay, yep.
So my understanding is that that development variance permit DVP 2022-06 for the proposed mixed-use building at 835 Gibsons Way for an 8.5 meter building height increase and a reduction of 56 parking spaces be issued subject to the following conditions. 1, registration of a 5 meter wide highway reserve covenant along the Gibsons Way property line frontage as per the request of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. 2, enter into a housing agreement or Section 219 restrictive covenant with the town of Gibsons to secure the development as a mixed market rental building for a minimum 20-year term, and that 28 of these units will be rented at affordable rates for a 15-year term. 3, registration of a covenant with the town of Gibsons to ensure provision of a commercial unit for childcare use compliant with the childcare licensing regulation on the ground level with a 10% rental discount to a childcare operator for the first year. 4, registration of a covenant with the town of Gibsons and a car share provider to secure 1, 2 car share vehicles and corresponding parking spaces in a publicly accessible location on site. 2, car share memberships to all residential units without a dedicated parking space in perpetuity. 5, registration of a covenant with the town of Gibsons to secure a bicycle repair station and an e-bike charging infrastructure in the bicycle storage area prior to the town granting building permit occupancy. and that development permit form and character DP 2022-26 for a proposed mixed-use building at 835 Gibsons Way be issued.
Thank you very much. That helps. You can catch your breath now. So that's, just to confirm, that's, yeah. Yeah.
You better read it than me.
Okay. So that motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor
I actually
DeAndretti?
have questions, Mayor.
Well, as long as it pertains to the motion. I mean,
Well, but-
we've asked some questions already, and they're
No,
questions
no, I
we've been
didn't have
talking
the
about for the last
No,
several
no, no.
months. But go ahead.
I have questions. The first question is regards the initial proposal for 81 units was a daycare with 36 space. This was cut to 16, I believe. And so this was a change that was not discussed here, but this is a change. The first proposal was a daycare with 36. Yes.
Seeing, no.
The reason is that we had some sort of conversation with the health authorities. So basically, we have to reduce the number of kids to be fit with the provided space. So basically, there is no change on the provided space from the first application, but just we realized that we need to have less kids at that space. And that's from the health
Okay.
authorities. Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question.
Sir Thompson?
My question has to do with the motion. Is it necessary for us to state in the second point, as it relates to will be rented at affordable rates for 15-year term under the CMHC definition? Is it necessary to state that?
I would expect that's really the only way to interpret it for our staff, but I'll just look to see, I'll ask that of staff to see if it's, it would help to add that.
That's an easy thing to add, and it makes it clear. So we could add the CMHC definition in there, or per CMHC definition, something like that.
Great, thank you.
Are you proposing that amendment then?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Kroll. Is that clear for staff, just to add wording? Yeah. Any discussion of the amendment?
I have a question after.
We're talking about the amendment right now.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? All those opposed? That amendment carries. So now we've got an amended motion. Any discussion on the amended motion? Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. Mayor, I have concerns because this building, we have never had a building with 7 stories. And we will have, according to our population here, right, 2.1 or 2.3 per unit, we will have between 170 to 180 people. And there's no community space set up in this building. The daycare is not going to be used by anybody, it's a daycare. So I'm concerned that the reports never touch anything about that. So we have a building in front with way less units that offer some community space. So we will have a mix of kids, seniors, adults, teenagers with no community space. And I feel like a little bit rushed to make decision without having this key discussion. We don't have any guidelines for development for tall buildings when we are having way more people in one single space. And I'm really concerned with that. There was never any mention this in any staff report, and I would like to bring this. We should consider, there are other, I'm sure there are guidelines around, and there are buildings that have this amount of people, and we need to consider that. Because we talk about livability, but a building that doesn't have certain space might have some issues with kids around running, teenagers, or so on. So it's a big worry for me.
So I do think we did discuss that earlier, and I think council heard your position on it, that you feel that I'm just trying to
So,
convey this because not everyone, just let me speak, please, you had your chance. That you're proposing that there should be communal space in this building for the residents to interact, like a television room or a rec room or something like that. I think is what I'm hearing, and I mean, one issue with that was certainly like it's hard to do affordable housing. The more amenities you have, whether it's green space outside or community space, it kind of all. It's a bit of a trade-off for those, is my understanding from talking to planning and developers. I do think we have something in our official community plan about guidelines for kind of higher density buildings, or suggestions, as when this was inquired about before. So presumably those will be considered as this goes further along. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify for everyone what that, when you're talking about community space, what that actually is. But I'll look to the proponent to speak on that too.
Exactly, that's the reason for that. So basically, we try to use the maximum we can, again, for to have a financial feasible. And the other thing is that the location of the building is very close to the other amenities. So it seems that they can have access to, and they are the building, the property is basically located in the major route, close to the transportation route. So it's easy, I think, for them to reach to facilities, basically.
I still have concerns.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, one more, Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my concern, it comes to completion of the project. We have in the town of Gibsons experience of projects that took a lot of council time and staff time and were not completed, or are still being worked after many, many years. My concern specific, this is a location that is in the heart of the town, and obviously we don't want any delay. So I'm asking council if council contemplates like a completion bond, for example, that if something happens with the project will be completed. This is it's a protection that the town can have, and an assurance that we don't know, the financial landscape is unstable. And I have concerns with that. And I cannot even contemplate the idea of a building half done, and how many years like that would be a eyesore and so on. So I would like council to contemplate this idea, and I'll propose even a motion in this regard.
I guess that, yeah, I think, I mean, I've heard this come up in the community before. I don't feel it's something that is really, I haven't heard it come up in other communities, is what I think I'm going to say. Is it's not really a typical step in the development process, or condition or requirement that of at least my understanding of years of this, and I hope maybe staff can help with this. But you know, on the same concern, I don't see why it would be. I mean, how kind of when we're entering into these, I guess, arrangements for property owners to develop their property, I don't see why it would be in their interest to kind of leave it half done. It's not something it doesn't. I can't really imagine that happening right now, or why that would be the intent of this. But I'll look to staff to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, where the town does take security in a project like this would relate to ensuring that the servicing is completed, like the frontage works, and also we take security for landscaping, but not to complete the actual project itself. That was entirely the responsibility of we've never taken any form of security, in my knowledge, that would sort of ensure the project's completed. So those are the only two options we have at the moment.
Developers do have to incur quite a lot of expenses that I don't think we even see at the town here. I mean, some of them are fees to us. There's significant insurance expenses. There's massive construction costs that everyone's having to deal with now. See, Councillor Kroll. Oh, I just saw you. Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you, Mayor. I never said the word intent. I don't think, obviously, the developer has intention to complete. I'm talking about in case something happens, unexpected economically, we are facing uncertain economic landscape. I am concerned that perhaps the building is halfway and cannot be completed, and it could be years until this project, it's passed to someone else or the problem is resolved. That's what I'm saying. This is very concerning to me.
I hear you, and I guess in response, I'd say I'd be concerned of like, it shouldn't be dependent on the size of the project or anything. If this is our concern about the economic landscape, it should be if this is a concern of all of council, I think we really need to consider it as a policy that we would expect of all developers equally, even single-family home developers, because that can be but to kind of, suddenly at the last minute of a development say that this is going to be, I mean, we have the right to do it, but I'd be uncomfortable with that personally. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay, Councillor DeAndretti.
Thank you. I would like to know if, I know we had this discussion briefly here about fire, and that currently our fire department, my understanding is, does not have a capacity to address a fire at the 7-story building. So what are we?
I have to stop you right. Like, there's no way we'd even be considering this if that was the case. It's gone through. It's been referred to the fire department. We're quite a ways down the road now. We're not. Councillor Kroll has some expertise on this.
To Councillor D'Andretti's concern, and she does sit on the fire commission with me, and we discussed it at the fire commission. They have no problem with 7 stories.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? The motion carries. Yeah, totally. Thank you. Corporate Officer?
I'd like to know if Councillor DeAndretti would like her opposition recorded in the minutes.
We've got that in our bylaw?
We don't have to record it. Usually, though, if they want it, it's requested.
Yeah, I thought it was just automatic, but maybe we need to have another look at that bylaw.
I think we just slid into assuming it.
Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't it be? I thought it always was, but anyway.
Vote no, but don't tell anyone.
Yeah. So now we have another variance in front of us. There's a report on page 71 with an accompanying engineering report. This one doesn't have the history of having come before council before. It has come to the design panel, the advisory design panel, but it's our first shot at it, and because it's a variance, it is committee, so it's a recommendation, but it's our first chance to look at this and discuss it as a council. So I think there will be some. I just want to ask staff. We have the order of this agenda, which unfortunately, because we were at UBCM too, we didn't have a chance to set the agenda together. Does the opportunity for people affected need to come before, like, presenting the report and being able to ask questions about the report? Because I see that that's the order of the agenda, but I'd like to change that if we can, because it'd be good if council could ask questions at least, and that might help inform everybody.
It's at your discretion what order you'd like that to come in.
Great. Well, yeah, first then I'd just like to look at, let's look at the report at 3.4. We can't have any motion related to that report until we hear from anyone who wants to speak. But I do want to give council a chance to ask questions of staff, and staff can make a brief presentation about it too. So, which our planner, Katie Thomas, can help with.
Would you like me to start a
Yes, please.
presentation now? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So the subject properties consist of 2 vacant lots, and they're proposed to be consolidated. So this map right here shows you the 2 lots. The property is located on the ocean side of Marine Drive, and it's next to the Casa Luna building, which has the Bayview Chinese restaurant situated inside it. The property also neighbors a single-family dwelling to the northeast, and across the road we have Jack's Lane, and you also have a number of businesses, including the dog groomers, Fong's convenience store, IKEA, and Theo's hair salon. Now, this development proposal requires 3 applications to be considered by council, and those are the ones that are starred here. So we have a development permit for form and character, development variance to increase the height from 4.5 meters to 7.5 meters, and to reduce the parking on site by 1 space. There is also a flood exemption to allow construction within the designated floodplain, with a 6 meter flood at construction level, 3 meters from the natural boundary. Now, the proposal looks to develop the site to build a mixed-use building with 9 residential units and 1 commercial retail unit. Underground parking would be accessed via a car elevator, which is shown on the right-hand side of this image. The building would be 2 stories from Marine Drive and 5 stories from the Seawalk. Now, the applicants took inspiration from historic photos of Gibsons, which are shown here, and the past buildings in Lower Gibsons had a range of 1 to 2 story heights with pitched roofs. This is an elevation showing the building from the Seawalk. A 3 meter right of way is being provided along the northeast property, which is shown here on the right hand side. And this is for the store main, which is to be relocated from the center of the lot. Now, in staff recommendations, they suggest that this be used as a public pedestrian right of way as well, which with stairs linking Marine Drive to the Seawalk. This is the side elevation from the south side, and it shows that the building steps down the slope. Now, due to the location of the property, several parts of the zoning bylaw regulate what can be built and how. The view protection area supersedes the C8 zone, while the floodplain limits all buildings and structures on any lot abutting the seashore from being located within 15 meters of the natural boundary. So, for example, the C8 zone has a height limit of 6.6 meters, which is measured from the average natural grade of the highest lot line on the lot. But this height is superseded by the view protection sub-area D, which speaks to a 4.5 height limit from the average natural grade of the sidewalk at Marine Drive. So this table shows the bylaw requirements and how the proposal compares to it. The C8 zone provides the setbacks for the front and the side lot lines. The floodplain regulates the 15 meter rear setback. The height is regulated by the view protection sub-area. Now this image shows the property that is in the view protection sub-area D, and then the properties behind are in view protection sub-area E. This image shows that the building has restrictions, what the building restrictions are under sub-area D, and it's noted that the flood setback of 15 meters supersedes the 6 meter view protection sub-area on the rear. Now, the proposed building would encroach on both that 15 meter flood plain regulation and the 6 meter setback too. Now, this map provides the maximum height from the view protection sub-areas and what can be built. So you can see sub-area D has a maximum height of 4.5 meters. Sub-area E, which is across the road, has a maximum height of 10 meters from Marine Drive, and then behind has a maximum height of 7.5 meters. Now, looking specifically at the flood exemption, the applicants have provided a report that states that the building can be located 3 meters from the natural boundary rather than the 15 meters stipulated in the zoning bylaw. And if the building is to be built at this setback, then it has to have a flood construction level of 6 meters. So this is just showing that the habitable space is starting at 6 meters. Now, the other thing to note is that the parking does not go down to the bottom of the building, and that's to reduce the excavation on the site. As the property is within the harbour area, the OCP states that if a height variance is requested in the view protection area, applicants have to provide visualization. So the following images show the development in relation to the existing streetscape. So this image is looking from down Jack's Lane with Black Bean on your left. Yeah. Now this image is looking from the Tapworks patio. This image is looking from Marine Drive, driving west into Lower Gibsons with the proposed development on your left, and you've got Black Bean would be on your right. This is looking from Marine Drive, but the opposite way. So driving east out of Lower Gibsons, and you've got the proposed building on the right, just past the Bayview restaurant. Now, the advisory design panel reviewed the application in August and provided a number of suggestions, and these were taken on board, and the drawings that we've just looked at are the revised and resubmitted drawings. The advisory design panel also looked at the variance requests, and they supported the requested height variance as the height and the peaked appearance of the roofs provides visual interest and character to the Lower Gibsons area, and they also supported the reduction of 1 parking space on site. Now, notification was sent out to the community on September 11th, and then additional notices were also hand-delivered on September the 22nd, and that's due to some of the tenanted spaces were missed in the first round. The town has received 15 submissions, each of which oppose the requested variances. Now, the key themes that we've lifted from those letters are that parking in the area is already tight. 2 stories doesn't fit with the existing streetscape, and there are impacts to the view. So the agenda was updated this morning to include all the submissions, and the staff report provides you 3 options for council consideration, and the applicants are available if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll first ask council if there are any questions directly for Katie on this. I see Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Katie. When I look at the images that are presented and the scaling to the neighboring properties, and I look at the architectural drawings, can you just confirm for me what is the height difference from the roof line of the next building, which is the Bayview building, to this building? What is that just basic difference? Can you confirm that for me?
Good question. Yeah.
Really good question, and I'm going to ask Heather, our from Place Architects. She's here, and she'll be able to give you that answer.
Sorry, Miriam actually has the drawings. So,
Miriam, would you be able to provide the height difference between the proposed building and the Bayview restaurant?
it's quite close. I mean, the renders are to scale. If you can throw the render back up there, it's only a couple of feet difference.
Mr. Mayor, can I share the screen again?
Either the render or the front elevation, either of those will, maybe the front elevation is shown. Do you, okay, so do you, can you show me the render? I don't have the adjacent buildings on this drawing. Yeah, it's, okay. I'll find out and I'll get back to you. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you right now.
I'll just ask planning though too, just based on that. I mean, we're not I'm not operating under the assumption, maybe I should be here, but that all the current buildings there are compliant to whatever our variances or setbacks are right now. I mean, I think none of them are, right? So if we're looking at the Bayview, assuming that that's the same as what what is allowed in the bylaw, that'd be a wrong assumption, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. We're checking the survey to see if we can find the height of the adjacent building, but one of the things to consider as we're talking about this is that side of Marine has a 4.5 limit, but everything surrounding is much, much higher, and we're below the height limit for almost all the other adjacent spaces. So.
Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to ask Katie just to go back on the slides prior to when you provide the table with all the setbacks, please. Yes. So my question is, I see height, view protection, but I don't see the rear setback, which is 6 meters. Is it there and I'm not seeing?
Setback, you're 15 from natural boundary or scheme.
No, the setback is from the natural boundary, so it's 15 meters. The floodplain supersedes the view protection sub-area D.
Okay, so I'm a little bit, because my understanding, so perhaps planning can enlighten me. My understanding is from the property line, the view protection tells that the building envelope has to be 6 meters from the property line. And this, currently, the current design is only 3 meters. Am I correct?
So there are several different regulations affecting the setback for this property. So you have the C8 zone that has a rear setback of 3 meters. You have the view protection sub area that supersedes the C8, which is 6 meters. Okay. And then you also have the floodplain, which then supersedes that at 15 meters from the natural boundary.
So Mayor.
Councillor DeAndrade, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I never saw anything about that a floodplain supersede. Where is it written that? I'm not aware of that.
Sure.
Can we just show you the image with the section? Katie, could you put up the flood construction image? Keep going. That one. There we go. So it's hard to see it from here, but the blue line on that, on the waterfront side, that shows the property line.
Yes.
Then there's a red line, the first or the second red line in there shows a 6 meter setback from that property line, that one right there. And then there's a dotted green line that goes further in. That's the flood construction setback. So when building, even though there's a 6 meter setback for view protection, the bylaw requires a 15 meter setback for flood construction or for building in a floodplain. So that's why we referred to that 15-meter setback because it's a much bigger setback than that 6-meter setback. So in this exemption application, they're asking to build 3 meters from that blue property line. And so that's where the building actually encroaches within that floodplain setback and the view protection setback.
Okay, it would be nice to be clear that, because this is not in the report. So that's my understanding, that it encroached 3 meters on the view protection.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's been clear. It's just but anyway, I think. Yeah, it's been. Anyone else? Questions? Councillor Lumley?
I don't know if there are questions. Definitely. Well, I do have a couple questions.
I do want to request everyone on council that let's hear from the public the opportunity to give people an opportunity to speak before we start getting into kind of our points or own opinions on this. We'll do that when we consider a motion, but we'll do questions for right now.
Question?
Yeah. Just wanted to remind everybody. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm not going to go crazy. So, first of all, it's an awesome report. I mean, you guys, again, you've managed to put something on this property that otherwise, if you looked at the restrictions, you probably would never think that it could happen. But my question is, there's an engineering report attached, explaining how that reducing the flood protection area is okay. So my first question is, should the town, I mean, when the town has these DP areas or makes up these policies, should the town then ask for like a peer review? Should we be asking for a peer review, or do we just take a developer's engineer the report at face value? Now, and I'm not saying that nobody at the town can understand the report. I can't understand the report, but I'm just asking if a peer review would be a proper thing to do when something this substantial. I mean, the fact that sea rise is obviously happening, climate change, so on and so forth. And I read today that the number one cause for insurance claims now in Canada is flood. So I just wondered if, sure, somebody can come to us and say, hey, listen, this report says it's okay, but I just wondered, maybe how you feel about what should we be doing? Should we be asking for a peer review? Do we reset our policies or our development permits? I'm just asking, what do you think?
Our Director of Planning on that.
Thank you. That's a tough question because each professional is accountable by their professional code of conduct, their ethics, their standards. So when they review these flood construction levels, they have to follow their standard. If there's something in the report that seems questionable or there isn't enough information and you feel that a peer review is warranted, by all means, I think it's important to ask for that. So there's no right answer. I think some professionals are really great at what they do and some are not as good. And it's really how they present themselves and how they present their rationale in the report.
Related question, and I think this has come up before, I just want to be reminded of it in this context, is what's the origin of our flood exemption? Because, I mean, we're looking at a scientific professional telling us that it could be X, but in this report, in this extensive report, but is that where the flood exemption plane came from as well? Like it was a different scientific professional who said this needs to be 15 meters? Where did the 15 meters come from?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I know we did a 1991 Thurber study in Gibsons to identify geotechnically hazardous areas, and a lot of those are along creek ravines and the shoreline. The authority is under the Local Government Act to set these floodplain areas, and that process is established through that legislation. But the origin of why it's 15 meters and not more, I'm assuming it's from the 1991 Thurber study. Pardon?
Riparian area regulations.
Oh, and there's also riparian area regulations, which is now called RAPR. So there are setbacks, but through the current study we're doing right now, the identifying flood levels, we are going to have more clarity on what those what it should be to today's standard. But right now it's based on a study from 1991.
Okay, I'm trying to remember going back that far, but some of these other buildings must have been built since 1991. Were they not? Or are we going, anyone here? No? Yeah. Yeah, CAO.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of things on that. I think on the official community plan, it says that the boundary is 15 meters unless a professional can make the case for otherwise. And if you look all the properties on Franklin Road, it's essentially, they all hire professionals. We took their report that says geotechnically it's safe to build on this site. That's primarily what that's about. The other thing that I note about this project, which is different from what we've seen in other areas, is that the flood construction level, I think, is one of the, it's tough to do, to be lower, but that's, to us, we see it as a benefit to the community because those properties are being built above where the projected flood would be. So yes, they are closer to the shore, which is more of a geotechnical question, but they are higher. They're in fact 6 meters higher than the walkways there, and that's to avoid flooding those buildings in particular. And I also note that the town's own works of rebuilding the seawall coming up, it's not meant to protect the properties up above it. It should be noted, it is there to protect the infrastructure, the public infrastructure in this case. And that, although that will provide a benefit to those properties regardless.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor DeAndretti?
Thank you, Mayor. On that note, if I know this project requires DPA 1, 9, and 2, so is water line behind the DPA 1, and if it's, I believe the geotechnical was this company, right, Sterling? Is this being, if it's not water line, is water line peer review, which is around the question, but I'm just wondering, or if the town requires water line to be the technical, the consultant.
Is this asking that there, Councillor Lumley already asked about a peer review. I don't believe that there's been no peer review for this project. I think it's just.
There's been no peer review for the flood construction level.
No, I'm asking about DPA 1. I mean, the question is because water line is the one that understands the configuration of our aquifer.
I just want to be clear, water line is one private consultant.
Yes, but they're the one who study our aquifer. So my question is, if it's not water line that does the DPA 1, or is it being peer reviewed?
I'm going to look at our Director of Infrastructure Services. I think he understands the question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, could you clarify, please, if you're referring to DPA 1 or DPA 9, DPA 9 being the Aquifer Protection Development Permit, DPA 1, I believe, is the ocean flooding.
Yes. In this particular case, DPA 9.
Understood. Proposal was received by the Infrastructure Department. We are currently in the process of reviewing our policy and updating our policy in regards to subsurface exploration in the lower aquifer protection area, which is impacted by or impacts DPA 9 and the water regulation bylaw through the development or the drilling permit amendment through that, that's regulated through that bylaw. And we have been in discussion as recently as this afternoon with Waterline, who is preparing some recommendations for updating that policy. So I'm hoping that, I don't have a timeline at this exact point because we're dependent somewhat on the consultants, but it is being looked at. It will be a policy update, which would then be applied to reviewing this and as well as some other currently active development applications.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And I guess this is for clarification. None of the development permits have been applied for yet. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. So all of the development permits have been applied for, and this one in front of council is the variance, the flood exemption, and the form and character development permit.
Okay. Follow-up, please, sir. To that point, so if what we have before us is a proposal that, given the variances and then the development permit process as it evolves, which may address Councillor Lumley's point of the engineers are going to look at things with respect to DPA 9, there's going to be things reviewed with respect to flood and so on and so forth. So as this project goes through the processes of acquiring the DPA, there may be things that come back to us, for example, maybe in the DPA 9, that this, as it's currently approved at this stage, may not work. And it's going to have to be either re-engineered, is that correct?
Director.
In a way, they might have to tweak some things if they can't dig down as far as their planning with their underground parking, for example. That might require some tweaking. But this, right now, what's before council is the form and character, so they would have to maintain the form and character as proposed right now. Whether there's more units or less units, it's the exterior look and feel of the building. Also, the flood exemption. If council authorizes a flood exemption to a 3-meter setback from the natural boundary, then that would authorize a development within that location. So right now, it's very much the form and character and the exterior height setbacks, building envelope. So if we get a DPA 9 that doesn't look like it can be approved, then they would have to tweak that and bring that foundation up and change the floor plans inside, but it shouldn't change the exterior form and character of the building, if that makes sense.
I saw Councillor Thompson next.
This is for the Director of Infrastructure. When we're considering this flood exemption, in your comments, future work is planned on the sanitary trunk for the foreshore seawalk on the east side of the property, and then state that this will need to be taken into considerations for the designs. Can you elaborate on that, and was that considered?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So earlier this year, the town was received notification that we received grant funding to improve the foreshore along the portion of the Gibsons Wharf from the wharf up to Armours Beach, which fronts this property. Well, at this point, we don't have any detailed design. I think the expectation, the understanding is that the elevation of the seawall will increase, and I'll look to the CAO to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it's 75 centimeters, so 3/4 of a meter is the elevation increase that is part of the outcome of this project. The work is effectively to improve the foreshore to reduce erosion on the bank. But the flood level or the seawall level will increase in recognition of sea level rise. So the comment that was passed on now back to the developer through the planning department is that the elevation of the seawall will be rising within the next year or two, and that they would have to take that into consideration with the water frontage of the development, just as far as the grades and the elevations of tie-in for some of the storm and sanitary connections.
Councillor D'Andretti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification. It is not clear to me. I understand that at least one lot in the zoning is a mixed commercial, if I'm correct. But was the other one also mixed? sorry, mixed commercial residential, because my understanding is if it's residential, you have setbacks from both sides, but this project, I know there's only one side with the consolidation, so was both of the lots zoned for mixed, sorry, I forgot the terminology, mixed commercial residential? I think that's the terminology.
Yes, the two lots that are going to be consolidated have the same C8 zoning.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Any other questions before we go to the public? Okay, Councillor Lumley?
Through you, Mayor, I have a question for one of the councillors. Is that okay? He sits on the ADP.
Well, you can, all the questions are through me.
Yeah.
Technically, so
Can
if
you
you're
ask
asking
him
about
for
the
me?
ADP, well,
Yeah.
I probably won't be able to answer. I'll probably need help on that. Go ahead.
I know it said in the report that they didn't have a issue with the height, the variance of the height. I would just like a little bit of context for that, or the reason why the ADP had no issues with the height.
Well, we have the chair of the ADP here, and we've got staff as well who attended those meetings, but I'll go to Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. To the question of height, and one of the things we did bring up at the ADP was to go to Councillor Thompson's question about the height of the adjacent building, and I suggested that when you're presenting material like this, it would be good to show the height of the existing building in comparison to what you're proposing. But with reference, the ADP, and it was, of our two architects on the panel, there was only one present at that time, but one of the other people on the ADP has been involved in a lot of projects, and generally the look, the height was not an issue. It was felt it's in a commercial zone that prior to this project coming along, the building across the street was 2 stories high. The upper floor was removed in a fire and they didn't replace it. So the building where Fong's Market is, it used to be a 2-story building at one point. So they felt because of the styling of the roofs, there is the necessity for a certain amount of height because of the mechanical requirements of the elevator. The main concerns that were brought up at the ADP was, vehicles pulling into that sort of pinched intersection. There was some concern expressed for that. And I think noted in the report a treatment to soften the appearance of what is still in the drawings as a sort of concrete wall at the seawalk level, which is for the potential buffering of any, sea level rise. But generally, I will say very candidly, I was expecting the ADP to, be a little more resistant towards this project, but by and large, everyone on the panel embraced it. There were some suggestions made with respect to color, and suggesting roof color be changed from black to a lighter color to reduce, heat absorption and things like that. A bit of concern expressed that mechanical features be, not blatantly obvious. Like if you look down on on that area right now, basically all you see is a bunch of exhaust fans and kitchen exhaust fans and roof vents. So I think the architects and everyone on the panel agreed that they had done a very good job to, put something attractive on that section of Marine Drive. To Councillor Lumley, is that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that report. Are there any more questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to get the numbers correct. So the developer is asking a flood exemption of 3 meters, and they are 3 meters encroaching on the view. If they get on the view protection, if they get exactly on where the line of the view protection is, how much will be the exemption? What would be the magic number? I just want to get correctly, right? Because the way it's asked, the way it's presented in the report can be confusing. We don't use the view protection, then we use the 15 meters. They are asking a 3 meters exemption, and it's encroaching 3 meters on the view protection. So I just want to get the number. If the line, if we exempt right at the line of the view protection, what will be the floodplain exemption? What will be the number?
Is this just math, like 15 minus 6?
I thought it is, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure, and that's why I don't want to make a mistake.
I think the numbers we're looking at is that they're asking for 3 meters, and 6 meters is where the view protection is, and 15 meters is where the flood exemption is.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're getting correct.
Yeah.
Because it's just the way it counts, right?
It's a hard question to answer because the setback, I don't know if the natural boundary is right on the property line. So that's where there's a little bit of discrepancy there. But what they're asking for is 3 meters from the natural boundary.
Yeah.
So I guess the takeaway is it will encroach within that 6 meter view protection area. And that's just part of the decision.
Okay.
And it was approved through the geotechnical engineer, said it would be safe as long as they build up to that flood construction level of 6 meters.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to extend the opportunity now to anybody here. It's already been mentioned that we've received a number of written submissions, and council has all read those and taking those into consideration. 15, is that correct? Sorry, maybe Katie's.
Oh, yes, 15. I think she said.
Yeah, sorry,
15.
not the 15 meters, 15 submissions, right?
I believe that's what was it. Yes, 15.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we've seen those, but we also in person want to extend the opportunity for any person who feels affected by this development variance proposal application at 458 Marine Drive to be heard by council. You're welcome to come up and state your name and address. Yeah.
455. Hi, I'm Kevin, 455 Jackson Lane, right across the street. With this whole garage that's coming through electronic, it's a very busy path walk there. You also have a bus stop that is also right there. From my experiences with condo living and with parkades and whatnot, usually spots are very tight, even though they have certain restrictions of how small they can be. Typically, it's meant for more of a compact car, if anything like that. A lot of us in Gibsons, we own trucks. I imagine people who are moving out here love the outdoor life, paddleboarding, canoeing, kayaking. They'd be using the same type of vehicles. Is there storage for like all the extra stuff? What's the height restriction of going in? Is it meant for a compact car? Can you even get a truck in there, a bigger van? And then from the drawings itself, it looks like the garage is going to be right next to Bayview, where a lot of people stand outside. They're waiting for their orders. There's a lineup to go in. Buono's line comes down that way too. Could go the other way. You could change traffic, but it's a very busy area for cars to be turning in. That safety comes to mind. Are there going to be hazard lights? There's kids all over the place there. It is the heart of town. Super busy. People walking around all the time. I am very concerned with the garage itself, how the cars are going to be going in, coming out. The space in the garage itself to be able to turn around and everything like that. You guys touched on the sidewalk there, touched on the water and how you have to be 6 meters up. That sounds pretty fine to me and everything like that. When you guys say that everything looks the same on that boardwalk on Lower Gibsons, it's the first 3-pointed roof on the whole Lower Gibsons, so I don't know how's that the same as everything else, where you say you see how restaurant vents and everything like that, and then all of a sudden you see 3 pointy roofs. In my mind, it's not that sea coast life that I see Richmond when I see that. I'm also from Richmond. I see lots of townhouses too. They all look like pointy like that. So I see Richmond and I see that. I don't see Gibsons or anything like that. Yeah, those are my main concerns of how it's supposed to look in our community. I love how the Lower Gibsons looks now. I'm afraid that if one person wants to go higher, like you said, the other restaurants, they used to be that high. Why not build higher again? Everybody wants to build higher. Why not take advantage of that? Why not have rooftop patios and everything on Lower Gibsons when this variance is allowed to go that high? The lady on the video says, oh, it's only a couple feet. Was that 2 foot long subs? I don't think it's that short, right? So like, I would think that other businesses along the way would want to go that high too, because one house can go that high, why not the rest? Let's all make more money. I'm just afraid that you let one person go that high, everybody will go that high too, because it's what's allowed. And honestly, 3 pointy roofs, I don't see that as Gibsons. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Greg Grant. I've been a Coast resident for about 45 years and lived in my current residence at 450 for the last 8 years. I think you can maybe flip up that slide that shows the difference between, I think if you look at the right side of.
I think we can do that if you want, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Katie can put that slide she had up. That showed the front, one more, please.
One more?
Yeah, there's I think it was one of the first slides they had.
Oh, one of the first slides okay, there's the first.
Front elevation.
This one?
I would expect that you'll see what you see on the right-hand side of that slide.
Greg, could you bring the mic just a bit closer to you? I just want to make sure everybody, including, can hear you.
I think if you look at that slide and you look at the right-hand side of that slide, you'll see that ochre or the tan colored.
Mm-hmm.
That's the color of the building I live in, so I would expect that would be just a corner, one of the corners of that building. I'm not certain of that, but so the building I live in is one story with a mansard roof, so it appears somewhat higher than its actual roof level. One of the concerns I have is with the parking. That subterranean parking, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I understand they're going to do a mechanical type of a lift. That could be problematic, but I can't judge that. I am concerned with the ingress and egress of the cars there. That last gentleman spoke about. And I looked at, just before I came here, I looked at a couple of the town bylaws, so I had a bit of grounding here. So for driveway access, when it's on Highway 101, this is 4.12 on the zoning bylaw, there needs to be, it's quite a distance, it's about 50 feet. There's quite a distance requirement when you're coming onto 101 out of a garage. And there aren't any other buildings that have that kind of parking that I'm aware of. So you're going to have cars coming and going. I would expect that they're going to have a garage door that's going to go up and down every time, or a light, or a dinger and a bell. So that is going to be quite aggravating for the people that live next door, I'll tell you that. That'll happen any time of day or night when people want to come and go. I really don't feel comfortable with that side yard setback of being 0, because that building is, how high is that? It's got to be 2 stories, so it's going to be 20 feet roughly. And so I have a 20-foot high wall when I walk out my door. It would make more sense to me if they split the the side yard setbacks to make it more equal, maybe, 5 foot in each side or whatever. I understand that there's a storm drain in the middle of that, and I was wondering how they're gonna deal with that, so they can move it one way or the other. There's I don't know, is that a 2.5 or 3 foot wide, concrete spillway? And it's not in the middle of the property, so they're gonna have to move it to one side or the other, or deal with it somehow. I'm not sure how to do that. The height, again, is probably, well, it's just a full story higher than anything else. And I know that way back when, 40 or 50 years ago, they did have 2-story buildings. They showed them there, but that wasn't the typical, right? The parking requirements in Lower Gibsons, we've talked about this for several years. It's very difficult. I can tell you that because I'm a regular customer of the town of Gibsons for parking tickets. I think in the town bylaws, as I understand them, that for apartments and townhouses, there are parking requirements. They run from 1.5 per unit to 2 per unit, depending on the form of the units. So that really doesn't come to the parking exemption that they're asking for as well. But my primary concerns are the parking and how you get in and out of that building in a safe manner. Because that last gentleman, I'm not going to repeat what he said, but that's all very exactly what happens around there. It's a very busy spot. They just finished changing the bus stop on the opposite side of the street on Jack's Lane, the corner of Jack's Lane, to pooch it out so it would make it easier for the customers to get onto the bus. Well, now you're going to increase that choke point by having cars coming directly out onto the street, because this is 0 lot line, right? Right onto the street, and then they're going to have to decide whether they're going to turn right or left, and there's going to be some accidents there, no question. So I don't really have any other objections other than the height, the side yard setback, and the parking issue and storm sewer. Now, how they deal with it, I don't know. But if it's going to go to one side, we'll make it to the other side. They can probably split the side yards. I mean, they could bring the storm sewer over and put it on the other, which is a single-family residential house. I don't know if they're going to be any happier than I would be, but or split the difference, and then they can be a more fair way to do it, I think. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Craig. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Oh. Go ahead.
Hi, Mike Carta at 466 Marine Drive, just one residential store house down. No, not mine. So I'm pro-development. I'd love to see this site get developed. It's been a long time. It's been vacant. I do have issues with the height, and I think as a developer, someone looking at this, they had to look at the parameters of what's available and say, this is what I can fit in. So I don't think anyone has issues with the water side and the height above flood. It's how the building incorporates into our downtown. So it's the start of the commercial section of town, and it borders on the residential. So we want to see how that kind of tiers in. And twice it was mentioned about 2-story heights or the height of the buildings across the street. That's in a different zone, so it's done that way for a reason. When Fong's had 2 stories, if they can build that without restrictions, it doesn't come before council because that's not a height restriction. So one of the things we're looking at is, would this height restriction cause issue for other developments? And I think a development was put forward to town at Beach and Marine, where the old railway was, or the marine repair was, where the boats got fixed and got coals. And that was turned down because of neighbors looking at height restriction. If this gets approved, are we gonna see something like that, and now precedent being set for the rest of the town? So, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And Judy, did you want to speak?
Yes, I'd
Yeah.
like to.
Mayor and council, I don't live close to this building. I live in Heritage Hills. And I just have a couple of concerns about the flood exemption. I mean, we're in climate change, everybody. And really, why do we have rules about flood exemption? Why do we have them if we don't follow them? This is the third proposal that has come to council since I've been watching, and for the flood exemption. And I'm wondering why we have it. Why are we worried about flood exemption if we don't follow the parameters? Why do we do it? Like, just don't bother. Because, I mean, anybody who's building is going to build something that's maybe flood resistant. They do in Florida. But really, I think we need to consider this seriously. So that's one of my biggest concerns, is on the whole, climate change. The other one is parking. Now, everybody knows about parking in Lower Gibsons. I had a business in Lower Gibsons. I argued about those 2 parking lots at Stonehurst. It's ridiculous. If, 1.6 per unit, that's not a lot. So if you had to cut back some of the residences to get that parking, you need it. And it's definitely, everybody's mentioned it. All those letters I read, they're all talking about the parking. So for me, parking is a really big concern. So make the development smaller, do what you need to do. The height, I agree with everybody about the height as well. I think it's a nice looking unit. I'm really happy that something's gonna go there. I just think maybe you need to work on a couple of things. Thank you.
Judy? Anyone else? Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Murphy. I actually live in the Casaluna building. I've been there for 8 years and I'm up on the top floor. I'm actually on the strata council of the building, and I also do the maintenance for the building. So just to let you know, I'm out there pretty much every morning. I clean the sidewalk in the front, and the traffic is going to be a serious issue there, I can tell you right now. Because when all the Mack trucks come in and they do their deliveries for all the restaurants, they park right there. There are now busloads of people that come. The buses stop there, and lots of people get off. There is a lot of pedestrian traffic there right now. So where the entrance is for that garage, that is just going to be a disaster, because you cannot have cars coming into there with the bus stop there, and there's no lights, and I'm not sure what the plan is to avoid any traffic there, but it's a really bad corner right now. And so I don't think this is going to improve that at all. Plus, my concern, of course, that's because I live in the building, you have 4 units that have their front doors, bedroom windows, bathroom windows on that stairwell going down. And now we're just gonna have this great big huge wall in front of us, and we're gonna lose the light or whatever. And that is seriously gonna turn that into a wind tunnel. And I'm not particularly happy about that, but that's because I happen to live right there. But for me, it's that traffic issue. And now that photo that they were showing doesn't show that new bump out in front of the Black Bean Cafe. And that's a really busy corner. There's a lot of people that come down Jack's Lane. So my biggest concern is just traffic. And when the construction is happening, I'm not sure where all the vehicles going. Like, how is that gonna happen in the front of the building? Because what did happen on the 5 corners was a bit of a disaster, where there's only this much room now and 2 fences. So I'm not sure what's gonna happen in front of that building or where all the construction vehicles are supposed to go. And parking, I think, is definitely gonna be an issue. So, anyway.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
I wanna say, thank you.
who would like to speak?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Crystal Trong. I occupy the residence at 622 Jacks Lane. I also represent Fong's Market, 39 years in business on the Sunshine Coast in Lower Gibsons. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for listening to what we have to say. So I just want to touch on clarity because it got a bit washed out there. I would like to confirm how many retail parking spots will be in this development.
We can,
One
that's a quick
retail,
question, yeah.
one retail parking
Yeah,
space.
right.
Hi.
That's in the report, yeah, sorry.
Got it.
Sorry, we didn't have the entire report
okay.
presented. We'd be here until 8 PM at least.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So one retail spot for the commercial space that is allowed in this mixed-use building. Of course, I'm not going to reiterate what everyone has to say because we all know parking's an issue. We have our own parking that we have our neighbors and their patrons parking at constantly. And some of you may on the board be able to relate to this matter. I am definitely concerned about the lack of parking. I am concerned also about the parking structure and how people will be able to exit or enter the parkade. If there will be signage or lights to signal for them to come in and out safely, I'm not sure. I am definitely concerned about how it will affect the local businesses on the block, and with the construction, how will they reroute the traffic? Will that look like it goes up behind Tapworks and around? I'm not too sure. So it's a very congested area, and thank you for listening to what I have to say today.
Thanks, Crystal. Would anyone else like to speak? Malcolm, come on up.
Hi there. My name is Malcolm Grave. I live at 559 Gibsons Way, which is at the top of Jacks Lane, just across from Seaview. I wasn't planning on talking, but I did want to further support the issue of the problem of traffic and parking on that corner. And to illustrate that, I used to drive my vehicle down there, and vehicles turn left into Jacks Lane, vehicles do U-turns there, and now with the bump out, there's two issues there. One is parking, the other issue is the traffic. So a number of people have spoken to this. I've taken care of that I now walk down to Blackbean. And sorry, I should have said I go down to Blackbean. And when I get my coffee or whatever in the morning, it's just so much easier to avoid taking your car into that area due to the congestion. So I'm pretty sure you're aware of that issue now. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak, Maggie? Could we?
Remain seated because.
Yeah, could we take the mic to Maggie?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to be very quick. My name's Maggie Penahalo. I live at 426 Marine Drive, along and away from the proposal. I have written a letter, and I have highlighted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, all the same as everybody else has said. But I have one last question. I'm having a terrible time envisioning a fire truck going down that parking thing to any fires on the ground floor. My mind boggles at how emergency vehicles will be able to look after the tenants in that building. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Come on up.
Mayor, Council, I'm David Guy. I live at 535 Marine Drive, a little farther down the street. I just want to record my concern about the precedence in the height variation. The 4.5 meter height restriction is there to protect the view from all the upslope homeowners, and that this might set a dangerous precedent to change that. protection. I'm also concerned that the advisory panel didn't appropriately consider a variance in that height and what the impact would be to those other homeowners and people in the area. It got waved off, frankly. It seemed like it wasn't a concern as long as it looked aesthetically nice. So that's my concern. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Would anyone else like to speak? I'll ask a second time. And are we, yeah, I don't think we have. We've just got on Zoom, we've got Katie and the proponent representative, right? Yeah, okay. Third and final time, would anyone else like to speak to this variance application? Okay. Thanks everyone for your input. Now it's, now we are, I want to emphasize again, just a reminder, because we usually do this at council meetings, but we're changing the process up to hear from the public during committee meetings, which has turned out well today, considering the turnout. But so we aren't making a final decision at this meeting today, but we are looking at recommendations from this committee meeting to go forward to council. And I'll look to council to see if anyone wants to make a motion on this or has any subsequent questions from the, I mean, I think we already asked questions for quite a while, but I think those submissions from people might bring up more questions that we could ask the developer or ask staff based on those. I mean, I actually have one too that keeps kind of sticking in my head is because I've seen this movie a couple times before. This is a third attempt at having a kind of a higher density development in this space here. One of them finally passed years and years ago, I think, and it also featured the parking. And I think that took a couple runs, and actually one of the members of the advisory design panel was on council at the time. So I think officially the approved zoning for it now would actually allow for that, like a car elevator, correct? I remember that was a discussion for like a year or two on council in the past, and again that kind of same access point. That's already in the zoning, I thought. I wonder if planning knows.
Yeah, the zoning does allow the use and the density. So it's not a rezoning before council. But it doesn't specify where the access point is specifically.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Kroll?
Does it have a name, the terraces?
Okay, the terraces, yeah. Councillor Kroll? Oh, I thought, yeah. Councillor Thompson?
I'm just wondering if perhaps the architect was able to find the information on my original question on the roof differences during this meeting.
Okay. We'll see if the architect can rejoin us.
We looked it up, and the adjacent building's about 4.5, 5 meters high, we think. Looks like 5.
Meters? Sorry?
Okay, so the adjacent building's 5 meters high.
Yeah, so 16 foot, 4.5 or 4.99 meters.
Okay. And we're looking at 7.5 for this, correct?
Right, but
Yeah.
that's to the very peak, right? So the bulk of our building isn't that high.
If you didn't have a roof, it would be fine.
Other questions from council? Councillor DeAndrade?
Just a clarification, you mentioned about making a motion. I didn't understand what. Because in my mind, I think in the past we would make a vote and then on the council meeting, it will be the final, but just.
Well, we have recommendations to move forward to council.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then
I mean, yeah, what could happen if we if we decide not to, this is a gray area, I think. Yeah, it might still, we might still have to entertain it at council, but we could
I'll make
make a recommendation now. Okay, Councillor D'Andrade?
Yeah.
Go ahead, motion supersedes the,
Okay, sorry, we are not contemplating making a decision right now, or are we, or are you?
well, this is where committee, we don't make a final decision, but as a committee, we make recommendations to council, which we do
Okay, so,
every meeting.
okay, thank you. So
Many issues.
So I'll make a recommendation that this project doesn't pass as it is, and the next, if the developer is willing to come back, that it would conform with the view protection, including the 6 meters setbacks, because it impacts the whole building. It impacts the whole massing, and that impacts a lot the views as well. So, is it too complex? Did you get?
Probably too complex word for word, but I think, I think we can,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, it's pretty
something
much
could be cobbled together
defeated.
from that. It's like, that it be denied, I
Denied,
think,
yeah.
is what Councillor D'Andrade is looking for.
And then the next, if the developer wants to bring the project back, that follows the guidelines of the view protection, which is 6 meters setback on the rear and 4.5 on the height.
With a request, I guess, sorry. Before we find, Councillor Lumley, did you have a input into that wording?
Well, I just had a question for you. Like, with her recommendations or any recommendations we make today, it's going to come back to committee before it goes on to council?
No, the recommendation would go to council. Okay. And then, it would need to be the recommendation would need the authority of the council vote to go forward. Is there a seconder for? Yes. Okay, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Okay, discussion of the motion. Councillor Lumley.
Okay, well, the motion's pretty stagnant, but what would be nice is, and I don't know if this can be done, but it'd be nice to see a 3D modeling of the elevation from the sea path. Like, I really can't speak for any of the developments that are old and that are down there now, and I wasn't in on those decisions, but I can't let them affect my decision or what I'd like to see come back to council, because I'd really like to conform. I would like to conform with the view protection, like the 4.5. I think that's like tremendously important. Even if the other building's a bit taller, even where it lays across from commercial businesses, we're starting to seep down the road into residentials, and it's really important. Another thing which I've said on the previous application that wanted to height variance is that, and again, nothing against Seashell, but every time I drove through Seashell when I first moved to the coast, I couldn't see any water. I didn't even know I was passing through 2 bodies of water. And my fear is that when you drive from the ferry, this beautiful little drive down the road, we're just going to have these massive buildings built up there, and we'll lose our view. And even if it's not even it's not even like the neighbor's problem. It's just anyone that might come through town, and especially me, because I go to the ferry every once in a while, and that's the way I come back. And I like to see the ocean when I return to the town. So that's why the view is really important for me. But I would like to see a 3D model. Like, I know you guys, you seconded the motion. From what I heard today, I've calmed down a little bit on the variance and like the flood variance. I'm not as crazy as I was earlier, but just a model, because when we saw the 3D model from the previous application on Marine Drive, you could really see what it would look like prospectively. Like, if I look at this imaging here on this report, and there's just that one image of just like it looks like a giant wall, and if I was walking down the path, I'd probably say no. you know, but I'd need a little bit more context. I'd have to see it in a greater way, and I think a 3D model would help with that.
Are you proposing an amendment to the motion then? Because it doesn't sound like you're actually speaking against the spirit of the motion, right?
Yeah.
So you could just add an amendment.
Yeah, I would amend to, well, she's already, no, I'm not going to amend the motion, because the motion's to come back with 6 meters, but, you know, maybe they could make 5 meters work, I don't know, so I really can't speak to that, but anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay. I thought you said you wanted it to be within the view protection, which is 6 meters.
Oh, on the bottom? No, I meant the front.
Okay.
Yeah, view protection.
Any other discussion on the, yeah, I'm not sure. Councillor DeAndrade?
I just want to remind council that when we change the view protection setback, it's not only a horizontal, the whole building envelope would encroach on the view of everybody. So 1 meter would make the building, or 3 meters, this will all make the massing way bigger. So that's important to consider, because the building start where the view protection, the line of the view protection. So if council decides to extend 1 meter for whatever reason, that's another the whole envelope, that 1 meter with all the consequences, and this impacts the view. And I think it's important to consider that the view protection exists to protect the views in every single, which implicates in massing. That's important to think about it. It would increase the massing of the building.
Okay, I'm not sure. This is Councillor Kroll, do you have any input on this?
Thank you. I think, you know, to Councillor Lumley's point, you know, it really is difficult at times to visualize what something is going to look like. You know, renderings are not always an architect's best tool. That 3D modeling does make a huge difference. Being able to look at the model from various angles and see how it's going to impact, like, you know, listening to some of the comments from the speakers today, yes, you know, coming out your front door and looking at a 20-foot high wall is, when you've had nothing there for 20 years, probably, you know, yeah, you know, it's jarring. You know, to Councillor Lumley's point, I don't think from this point, you know, the rest of Marine Drive to the Chekwalk Bandland is residential. It's not zoned mixed commercial, as is the case with this. You know, I would have appreciated seeing a model. We brought up at the ADP our concern for the parking and the pinching there, and how are they going to address alerting people at the bus stop, you know, at the crosswalk, drivers of a car trying to enter or exit. You know, it's a very challenging location. And I'm assuming from a developer's point of view that, you know, to make the project viable, you need a certain number of units. You know, that came up earlier at this meeting with 835 Marine Gibsons Way. So I'm not, you know, I understand where Councillor D'Andretti's coming from. I'm not totally in support of what she's advocating. I would like to see some better renderings and 3D modeling. I'm also concerned that, you know, as this project proceeds to get their DP 1, 2, and 9, that there are going to be engineering concerns that it's going to come back to us with, you know, the Director of Planning suggested tweaks. I'm suggesting that there might be larger tweaks, because I know what David, when he built Casaluna, went through, and he had some horrendous challenges that suddenly, going into the project, he wasn't aware of, but as the engineers got involved and geotech was done, there were huge impacts made to his project. So right now I'm sort of feeling a bit torn.
Thanks for, I put you on the spot there. I'm just trying to get a sense of where we might go here. And I've got a better sense now, but does staff want to add some input?
I don't want to interrupt council's conversation, but when you're ready, I'll read the motion as we think it reads into the record, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, that would help, but yeah. I don't know if we're hung up on that, but I'm kind of hearing that some members of council might want to go in a different direction on this, but still would have concerns about the 3D modeling. And I guess one question I have is if we did go in that direction, would it be possible to ask for some of the geotechnical reports and things that would support other parts of this application prior to making this decision? And I do think it's kind of thought, no, we've got to isolate all those things, but really when we're talking about flood exemption and things, it's kind of hard to isolate those things. It's hard for council to say, yeah, we're okay with this variance when we don't even know what some of these reports say yet. Director.
Thank you. The flood report is part of the package, so it's in there. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I've been advised that they do have a 3D model. So I don't know if they're able to share their screen and share it, but if that would help council with the decision or with this deliberation, they might be able to share that 3D model.
I don't know, it might, but it might be more fair to just give us time on it too. Put it off. What does council think of that? I mean, I'm curious to see it, but I don't know if I want to make my decision right in a flash on it. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, exactly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Part of the problem is that, it's almost like you can, the reason I pulled off a lot of the flood, and I understand where Councillor DeAndretti's coming from, is that, like, realistically, we're just like kissing with the climate change and the ocean rise. We're trying to move the sewer up to Marine Drive, and essentially we're gonna at some point just kiss the pathway off. Unless you keep just raising it, and that'll be higher than the buildings there as the sea rises. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's yeah. Well, it will. If you look at Marina House, like their backyard is below sea level, so obviously we want to avoid some of those issues, and Massing's one of them with her. I would bring back the 3D models at 4.5 and maybe 6, 5, 4. I don't know. I'm just saying it'd be interesting to see. If flooding, if the engineers determine that you can build there and have zero impact on flooding, and you have the appropriate landscaping, I don't know, which direction you could go in with with a lower profile. I'm kind of more amenable to that, but I think the height at the front, and there's so many issues that everyone's brought up. It's almost like if there's no commercial parking, why have commercial spaces there? Like, why are you going to add to street parking that there's not enough of? There's so many questions that you could ask yourself. And to maybe, Mr. Mayor, to rush this back into a regular council meeting for a decision, I don't know, I'm kind of nervous about it. I'm nervous for the developer.
Okay, we do have a motion on the table. Councillor DeAndretti?
I just want to bring some point. If we follow the view protection, there is there for a reason, and we shrink the massing, the number of buildings would also be shrank, the number of apartments, so that will address some of the parking. So that's why it's so important to respect the zoning that it is with the view protection, because addresses more than view, address massing, which implicates in parking.
I guess it's hard for us to get a picture of that at this point. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you. I want to just address the fact that the reason why I supported this motion too is the degree that we take the time, and we've considered this, and looking at the height and the fact that there's a variance here that's very largely, it's a big ask. That for me is significant enough to support there alone, with a number of letters that we've had and people sitting in this room, that it's a big consideration. And in fairness to even, the developer, that I just want to communicate that it's a serious and important aspect of why I want to second that motion. It's right here.
Okay. Some final points. There's one thing that I just can't help but say is I'm really frustrated with those properties right now and the history of them, and how like there's, a fence right up against basically the road. Like I think it's unsafe now. And I think it would be nice to have something there one day. And three developers have tried, this is the third try at it that during the last 10 or 20 years or so that I've been here. I hope we don't. I hope this developer continues to work on this project, and here's the concerns of the neighbors, and we can figure something out. And I really appreciate all the time staff has put into this, because these properties on Marine are really challenging with all the setbacks and trying to make something work there, as Councillor Lumley raised at the beginning, it's very difficult. So I just wanted to raise those points that I think haven't been raised yet. But Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And this probably would be for staff, like in the engineering report. Currently, there are plates on the retaining wall between the sidewalk and the abyss, and there's cracks in that wall, and the plates are there to measure the wall structure. So I'm assuming this project would address that concern of that wall. And my concern is, if something doesn't happen on this property, what happens when the wall gives way? Like, who's liable?
Yeah, CAO Machado.
Would you like me to address that question, Ms. Mayor? Or is it just rhetorical?
I saw your hand up, so if that's, or did you have another?
No, I won't say anything.
Okay. Was it in response to that question, though? Or, yes. Oh, okay. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, that wall is a concern. It is for several years, we've certainly been aware of the structural integrity of that wall, and that it's not particularly a secret. The challenge is its costs for us to go in and redo that whole wall, because it's essentially what holds the street up, and it's also the drainage, and those are two big concerns for us, and that's part of the motivation of working with the property owner, because the wall actually sits on their land at the moment. So it's not something that's going to go away, but that's a separate matter from the development itself. But we'll look at the state of that wall in terms of any concerns from risk, and see if through infrastructure how we could be addressing that in the absence of a development.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Could you repeat the motion,
Yes.
please? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the motion sits, to the best of our understanding, that form and character development permit DP 2023-33 for 458 Marine Drive be denied due to the proposal not meeting the view protection regulations, and that development variance permit DVP 2022-09 for a height increase and parking reduction at 458 Marine Drive be denied, and that a flood exemption proposal would be considered by council that meets the view protection requirements, including building height and rear property line setback of 6 meters. We did wonder if you'd like us to add at the end of that with a 3D model.
That was, no.
No.
I mean, that was something that a councillor raised, but then clearly said he didn't want to bring it forward as an amendment, so I want to respect that. I mean, somebody else could still amend it right now. We've got 10 seconds, but I don't want to, I don't want to do that just because a councillor said, explored it, but then decided not to go that route. Councillor Lumley.
I'll add it as an amendment if I can.
Now you do, you've changed your mind. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm actually gonna, I'd like to amend it.
You just wanted someone else to say it for you, is that? No, we need a seconder first.
But can I clarify?
Sorry,
No, I
when
don't
someone
underst-
makes an amendment,
No, I know, but I
that's
don't understand the amendment. But for what? For the 6
Got a
meter
seconder.
setback?
Okay.
For the 6 meter setback? That's what I want to understand.
Yeah, corporate officer.
Yes, the amendment then would change the last sentence to now read, and that a flood exemption proposal would be considered by council that meets the view protection requirements, including building height and rear property line setbacks of 6 meters with a 3D model.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's vote on that amendment.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, there was. Councillor Thompson, yeah. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? That amendment carries. So we're back to the amended motion, and I think we've discussed that sufficiently at this point. All those in favor? The motion carries. So that's a recommendation that will go to our next council meeting, not immediately, but October 3rd. Is that?
Nothing with you.
Okay. And our next meeting of Committee of the Whole is October the 17th, 2023, at 3 p.m. I think that was a long meeting for a few things. But no one wants to adjourn it either. But, okay. Yeah, that's intentional, yeah. Councillor Lumley, seconded by Councillor Kroll for adjournment. All those in favor? We're adjourned, and we're definitely having a break for... How long do we need? Like, because